Hey there everybody, it's Katie with Picture Perfect Lawn Maintenance. I want to talk to you for a little bit about what we are doing next on the fertilizer side of Picture Perfect, which is going to be our round 1 recovery application that's coming up soon. We are in countdown mode. It's finally getting to that point where we can see the end to winter. At this point we are all getting stir crazy. It's a lot of cabin fever, so we're really looking forward to being out there in a couple of weeks to start this application of fertilizer. Round 1 is super important for anybody's program because it's what's waking your grass up from the dormancy that it's gone under during the winter season where it stops growing. We're going to talk a lot about the stress that grass goes under during the winter, even if it's a cool season turf like fescue. But first I'm going to give you 10 seconds during that little intro clip that nobody really likes to watch. Scroll down, click subscribe, do what you need to do to make sure that you stay up to date on the videos that we have coming up for you after this one. So to understand the Picture Perfect fertilization program, you have to get a little bit on level with what kind of conditions we're actually dealing with in the RVA area. Virginia dirt left to its own devices is kind of garbage. There's a really big difference between dirt and soil. Dirt is clay and sand and a lot of minerals that you talk about more in geology that isn't necessarily hospitable to a proper growing condition that turf grass needs. Soil is really good for growing grass or any other plants. Soil is what has organic matter. It has a lot of nutrients. It has a healthy biome going on that supports all of the processes necessary to the development of healthy grass. Unfortunately, for 99% of the properties that we treat, we're going into these treatments with a lot more dirt than soil. That natural topsoil that you need is stripped away when a home is built because of the grading process that has to go on for the lot. And as a result, all you're left with is that dirt. What's awesome about our program is that instead of just kind of bypassing the soil process and directly stimulating the plant to make it grow and make it green, we're actually taking the time to address the soil deficiencies and create a healthy environment by, in the long term, actually rebuilding some of that topsoil through carbon-based fertilizer and organic components that are really, really important to reestablishing that healthy system. So the other big issue with our area, besides the fact that the dirt is lacking in the nutrients that your grass naturally needs to be able to be successful, is we are in kind of a mid-zone for the East Coast. So anybody further south than us has mild winters comparatively and still hot and everything summers, so they usually go for warm season turf. Bermuda, Zoysia, St. Augustine, things like that are going to be really, really hardy during the summer and just go dormant and kind of shut down during the winter. Everybody north of us is going to default to fescue and bluegrass because they're the cool season grasses that can easily withstand really, really cold winters and still look nice and green during the summer, which further north isn't going to be so dramatic. Our zone is kind of caught in the middle because we still have very aggressive summers and very cold winters. As a result, it's kind of a pick and choose between which type of turf do you default to when you're in a middle zone like that. The vast majority of our area defaults to fescue, and that's what our primary program is focused on because at least it's going to stay healthy through the winter and still be pretty and green, as opposed to if we had a warm season turf, in which case for about 6 months of the year it would be dormant and brown and not looking good. So we're not just fighting terrible soil, we're also fighting more extreme climate conditions that are not favorable to any specific type of grass. Because we're using fescue, we have to keep in mind that summer is going to be really, really stressful for it, and we have to have a lot of nutrients already in the soil to make sure that it's going to be able to feed itself and support itself during that most stressful time of the year. So even though, like I just mentioned, summer is going to be the most stressful time for fescue, winter is still really rough. There are 5 big ways in which fescue is stressed out during the winter, and I'm going to hit them one by one with you real quick. First, soil compaction. Recurrent freezing and thawing of the soil ends up creating a compacted environment more so than other times of the year, and compaction ends up making the free flow and movement of roots, nutrients, and water a lot more difficult in the soil itself. Second, frost and snow damage. If you remember from childhood science classes, ice expands more than water does. So freezing temperatures and frost and snow can actually cause the water that is in the cells of the tips of your grass blades to expand and rupture when they get that cold, which causes some cell damage and die-off. That's why during the winter it's pretty normal to see frost burn where the tips of your grass are a yellow color. Sometimes these will bounce back, other times the tips completely die off. Once you mow it a few times, it ends up kind of leveling out because it grows through, but it doesn't look great and it's stressful to the plant. Third is salt runoff. During the winter, a lot of neighborhoods and homeowners will apply salt compounds to the roads and their driveways and sidewalks to reduce the risk of ice and stuff like that from forming during the winter. As a result, when this kind of dissolves from the rain and the snow and runs off into your soil, it leads to a lot of toxicity entering that system, which can be very, very bad for the grass. Fourth is weed development. Obviously during aeration seeding time and for the months following it in the fall, we really restrict the amount of weed control that's being applied to the lawn in order to give that baby grass the support and lack of stress that it needs to be able to develop healthily. As a result, a lot of weeds take the opportunity to move in as well, causing possible crowding out and other factors that conflict with the successful growth of your lawn. And fifth is nutrient depletion. As a result of all of that baby grass that we put down in the fall developing and soaking up its nutrients to be able to grow correctly, and natural leaching processes in which the nutrients in your yard exit, you're losing a lot of that, and this time of year ends up being kind of a low point in terms of where those nutrient levels need to sit. So of these winter problems that we often see with soil and grass and everything, which do you think are hitting your yard? Comment below. I want to know what's going on in your property so that we can talk about what the best plan is to address that specific issue. So with all of these issues going on in the soil and in the grass by the end of winter, we hear a lot of questions in terms of what should be done and how to handle it best. And we ask some of them ourselves. What spring fertilizer nutrients are most effective in addressing the problems and issues seen at the end of the year in lawns and in soil? How do I tackle soil nutrition for the long term and still encourage a healthy, attractive lawn in the short term? And when should I treat actively growing weeds, and how do I prevent weeds from coming up later in the season? These are all really good questions, and they are all factors that we address and cover with our recovery round of fertilizer. We call it the recovery round because it is literally recovering your lawn from the winter. It's a really important factor because there's a lot, like we just talked about, going on during the winter that your lawn needs help with. The first step is of good fertilizer, good nutrients going down to make sure that your lawn is going to be successful. And the second step is weed control. And that's a really important thing too, because this is actually one of the most weedy times of year based on the ups and downs of weed control through the season to give space for seeding. So obviously the big thing in any application or treatment from a fertilizer company is fertilizer. With this recovery round of fertilizer, we are doing not only weed control, but also a pretty heavy dose of nutrients and other products that are going to be really, really important for the successful development of your lawn through spring and into summer. This product blend that we're using with this application is cutting edge in terms of how long it's been on the market. It's brand spanking new, and it is well tested and well formulated to be very, very, very effective in the way that it is not only transferring nutrients to your lawn through carbon fertility, which is really, really cool science, but also just the multiple types of products that are bundled in together to make it extremely well-rounded and actually really, really appropriate for the issues that we see in RVA and are hoping to address. The little tagline that I like to use for this is carbon-based, soil-driven. It's really, really important to develop healthy soil, like we keep talking about, to ensure the progressive and self-sustaining development of your fescue turf. So this product that we are using for this round of fertilizer has kind of three big components in the way that it's doing that. First, in the long term, we're looking at root development. There are two products that are blended into this mega fertilizer that are focusing on root development. The first is humic acid and the second is sea kelp. These are awesome organic assets that are really, really vital for healthy root development and drive those roots deeper into the soil, reducing compaction and giving the lawn a chance to have a really successful summer because its roots will be so complexly developed. So if you know your stuff, humic acid is going to sound familiar. Humic acid is a huge component in humus, which is a huge component in organic soil. Humus is kind of all of that organic matter in soil on a geological scale that hasn't been converted into a mineralized form that plants absorb. As a result, it's kind of in its resting state. It's just sitting in there waiting to be absorbed later on as it's processed, and is also adding a lot of structure to the soil, and as a result increasing the soil surface area, which allows for a lot more nutrients to be held onto and just kind of snowballs basically into this really, really efficient self-sustaining system that can stretch over long periods of time without much external input. What that basically boils down to is that your nutrient absorption by roots is going to be a lot more efficient, and because there's going to be a lot of nutrient availability, those roots are going to want to develop even more, and they're going to have the room in a nice, soft, healthy soil to be able to actually do so. The sea kelp, what's cool about it is it's got micronutrients that are really important. It's kind of like the extra list of your vitamins like zinc and stuff like that, but it also has a lot of plant hormones. These hormones are really great for root development. They're those fundamental processes that your plant actually needs to develop healthily. So as a result, you've got your humic acid, which is getting your soil right and encouraging root development, and you've got your kelp that is getting your plant right and encouraging its root development, and it all comes in together to create this really healthy environment and really healthy root system. Remember, the stronger a lawn's root system is in the spring, the better it's going to be able to survive the stress of summer. So the second long-term goal that this application is tackling is soil structure and soil quality. Like we talked about earlier, the quality of soil for the purpose of developing a healthy lawn in RVA is seriously lacking for the most part. We've got a pretty strong granite bedrock system that has terrace formations and these pockets of sand and gravel and stuff like that. If you think about what sand and gravel are, it's much larger, looser structures than, for example, a clay or a loam kind of soil where it's a lot more fine particles that are packed together. As a result, because we have such sandy soil for the most part, what is called a cation exchange capacity, which basically means the soil's ability to hold on to nutrients, is very, very low. So a lot of fertilizer input gets lost to leaching processes, and your plant never has the chance to actually absorb it because it's just running through. It's kind of like if you have a sifter versus a bucket. That sifter is going to lose things a lot more quickly than a bucket that maybe has one or two holes in the side. This recovery round of fertilizer for Picture Perfect, the product that we're using has biochar incorporated in it as a really, really efficient carbon-based vehicle for nutrient loading. But what's also cool about biochar is once it enters the soil, because it has such a crazy high surface area, because it's got all of these little nooks and crannies, it's raising your cation exchange capacity of your soil just by being there. As a result, over time, we're developing a healthy system with healthy topsoil, and we're holding on to more and more nutrients. So again, it kind of snowballs into this healthier system that's able to be a lot more efficient and self-sustaining. So those are our two long-term focuses of this product blend that we are using for this round of fertilizer. We're looking at getting the soil healthy, and we're looking at creating a healthier root system for the plant before it gets hot in the summer. The short-term focus of this application is, of course, going to be getting your lawn pretty for spring. There's nothing worse than halfway through spring still having a lawn that is kind of wilty and thin and looks beat down and just not attractive. So the macronutrient and micronutrient blend of this fertilizer is really, really effective in perking that grass up and getting it healthy and growing. There's a pretty good amount of nitrogen, still on the more conservative side, since putting on too much nitrogen increases your risk of things like disease, but it's a heavier dose of it than what we do in other applications to be able to encourage some growth and get your lawn waking up. It also has a good amount of potassium in it, and what's great about potassium is that it is very, very vital for a lot of processes within the plant, like cell wall development, that are going to strengthen it and give it a lot of vigor for the spring and summer. In addition to those macronutrients, we've got a lot of micronutrients like zinc, manganese, calcium, iron, sulfur, things that are all working together and all bundling in to create a really, really healthy plant system that's going to be beautiful and green and very, very picture perfect. If you're interested in learning more about soil nutrients, soil development, or anything like that, be sure right here to check out part 1 of 4 in our soil sample series. And when you're done with part 1, check out part 2. When you're done with part 2, check out part 3. Keep going because it's a ton of great information if it's something that you're interested in learning more on. So we've got our soil fertility down pat for this recovery round of fertilizer, but the other huge factor, and what a lot of people are a lot more concerned with, is the weed growth that is being seen and will be seen later in the season. We are putting down pre and post-emergent weed control for this application. And if you're interested in learning more about spring weed control, check out our spring weed control video right there to learn a lot about exactly what pre-emergent is, what post-emergent is, what weeds are, and what kind of things are being treated. For the most part, this treatment with the post-emergent weed control is going to be knocking out the majority of broadleaf weeds that have grown in since the fall. These are things like your dandelions, your henbit, your clovers, those typical things that really stand out in the grass because they don't look anything like grass. The pre-emergent weed control is actually something that prevents weeds from coming up later in the season. So crabgrass and some of those broadleaf weeds we mentioned are going to be significantly reduced in their later appearance because it's inhibiting the successful germination of those baby plants from breaking through and entering your yard and disrupting that uniform look that everybody's going for. This application is really successful in doing a huge hit to the weeds in your yard, but we're going to be following up with more weed control in round 2 because there's likely to be something that doesn't get completely knocked out and something that comes in before that pre-emergent really takes effect. There's always going to be a little bit of overlap, and there's no such thing as a weed-free lawn. Again, this is something that we talk about in our spring weed control video, but anybody who promises you a 100% weed-free environment is lying because there's no such thing if it's an open system like a lawn. You're always going to have external factors coming in and contributing to your weed population, but the biggest thing is to control and reduce the occurrences of these unwanted weeds to make sure that your lawn has the best successful chance possible to be as close to weed-free as it can be. So what kind of weeds are you seeing in your lawn? I want to find out. So comment below. Let me know what kind of weeds you guys are seeing. I want to know if it's henbit. Are you seeing some dandelions starting to come through? I saw them in my yard yesterday because we had a little bit of a heat spell last week that perked them up and made them think that, oh, hey, it's spring. I hope they shut down because they're terrible looking. But let me know what you're seeing. I want to find out so that we can talk about what it indicates in terms of your soil issues, as well as whether or not it's something that is going to be easily treated or might require some extra stuff since it's going to be one of those difficult weeds. So that pretty much covers it in terms of what's going on with our round 1 recovery application for the Picture Perfect Fertilizer program. The biggest takeaway I want you guys to get from this is that every application that we do and that a good company is doing is different. It's not some one-size-fits-all over-the-counter weed and feed that's designed to be effective for huge, broad areas. That's not realistic. Every area is going to be unique, just the way that every yard is going to be unique. And while we can't do a maintenance program for each individual person, we can do a maintenance program for RVA. And we can do corrective treatments for each individual person, which we talk about in our soil sample series. If you have questions about this content, let me know below. I want to hear what your thoughts are, and I want to hear what videos you want to see next. In a couple of days, we're going to be releasing our What's Next for February video, so be sure to stay tuned for that. If you didn't already, subscribe and let us know what you're looking forward to this spring.